I'm so excited to have you here to learn more about DevOps on GCP. The course has been designed to give you not only an introduction to DevOps, but specifically a deep dive into the Google Cloud services that are related to DevOps day-to-day activity. Module 2 will go ahead and talk about the DevOps Overview, which is basically an understanding of what pipelines are and why DevOps is so important. Module 3, we're going to talk about App Engine, which is a platform as a service on Google Cloud. Module 4 will be Kubernetes Engine, which is a container management system, Kubernetes on Google Cloud. If you're already familiar with Kubernetes, then this is an easy lesson for you. Module 5, this is going to be specifically into our pipeline services. In other words, container registry, cloud build, cloud source repositories. Module 6, we're going to talk about microservice deployments. Now, when it comes to microservices, basically we're running snippets of code, little applications, basically, is another way we can look at it. Now, this will be services such as Cloud Functions and Cloud Run. Module 7 is going to be mainly Stack Driver and other facets about managing our deployments. Module 8 will be focused on infrastructure as code, mainly deployment manager. And then Module 9 will be the course closeout. Now, before we get started, let's do a quick introduction to your instructor. My name is Joseph Holbrook, and I'm the CLO of Tech Commanders. I'm based out of Jacksonville, Florida as well. I've been in the IT industry for 25 plus years in various roles and work for different types of organizations. I'm a highly certified professional and also a course author and a book author as well. Now, when it comes to the course itself, the course was really developed to provide you reinforcements to really ensure that we understand the topic at hand. I'll be going through a lot of different demos. Some of those will be specifically on Jenkins. Some will be on GCP services such as Cloud Build and Source Repositories. I'll also be going through whiteboards where I'll be basically walking you through how things work from start to finish. And then the course itself will be providing you links, practice questions, and flashcards. We have a lot to learn, so let's go ahead and proceed to the next lesson. In this module, we want to go ahead and get an idea about what DevOps is if we don't already know, and then understand what pipelines are and talk about continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment. And then we'll wrap up the module with the focus on DevOps on Google Cloud, specifically about the types of services that Google has around DevOps. Then we'll get into how we could get started deploying pipelines on Google Cloud. Let's go ahead and get started with the next lesson. What is DevOps? Now, DevOps is, of course, a very common term that's used in IT. And we want to know what exactly this means. So DevOps is really more or less a collaborative effort between basically operations and development. That's where the term came from, Dev and Ops. Now, DevOps, basically from a principal perspective, is really meant to provide better software. That's really where it's going. And basically, we want to use DevOps as a way to engage more of an agile relationship between development and IT operations. Now, this came about for several reasons. Traditionally, in IT, development, operations, support, for example, there were two different business units in a lot of organizations. And because of that, a lot of communication just didn't happen because you had different business units. And because of that, development would do their own thing and operations would do their own thing. And this caused some problems. Development would roll out new updates, wouldn't tell operations. So with DevOps, this is solved through collaboration. So the goal of DevOps is to change and improve the relationship by advocating better relationships. The reality is that DevOps is not so much a technical exercise, it's really a people exercise. Now, when it comes to communication and collaboration, it really is meant to remove silos. That's really the goal of DevOps. At its core, the philosophy and practice is really going to focus on agility, collaboration, and automation within IT and development team processes. Well, what this means is that we're going to work together and we're going to remove the silos and we're going to use automation and improve processes to basically bring a better enterprise rollout. Now, that's an application rollout. Now, when it comes to DevOps, another thing that we want to consider is to understand the goal. So the goal is really to bridge the gap between development and operations. Again, we need to remove those silos. When we do that, we want to remove the blame game. And this is something I remember quite vividly in a lot of situations where you didn't really get communication from the development team or the operations team. And basically, you're like, well, who's to blame? Well, again, who knows? The reality is that no one's communicating. So we want to basically create collaboration in our environments to really improve upon any kind of issues that we run into typically with the silo. And if we do that, we're going to have some great benefits. So the main thing to think about DevOps is that it's not really a methodology. It's not really a technical exercise in a lot of respects. There is technical to it, of course, but it's really a culture shift. It's really trying to work together as a team, even if you may be in the other side of the world or on the other side of the building in a different business unit. You're really supporting the same mission is really what it comes down to. So DevOps really brings together principles and workflows and best practices to the enterprise. When we think of, for example, pipelines and processes, we know that, of course, there's continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. We may have heard of these terms. And I'll touch on these terms briefly, and then we're going to go deeper into each of these further on in this module. But basically, CI, known as continuous integration, is where we're going to merge our working copies into a pipeline. Now, a pipeline is what? It's nothing more than basically strict processes in place. And the benefits we could realize could be everything from risk reduction to manual processes, improved efficiency. Now, continuous delivery is an extension of CI, but it's really, again, taking things basically from being, when it's built and actually bringing it into effectively a release stage. And then we have basically continuous deployments. This is really an extension of CI as well, but it's really meant to automate everything. It's meant to remove manual issues. So when we extend automation to testing, to deployment, this can bring some benefits. So basically, it provides for iterative processes and ensures quality of products. And lastly, we want to think about continuous deployments from a benefit perspective as lowering risk, reducing lead time, and also providing quicker feedback. So if we're able to get to market quicker, for example, that's a benefit to the whole company, not just to development. So this is a big deal if we actually, plan and schedule and really do what we need to do. Now, to sum up, for example, these pipelines, basically you could see how we have continuous integration, continuous delivery and continuous deployment. We're just basically going through each stage and adding to it when we get to deployment. And we want to really get to a point where we're at continuous deployment to where everything basically goes from basically the repository to the build process to integration to release and deploy without having any manual tasks. That's really, I think, the main goal. Now, when it comes to comparing these terms, and again, I wanted to put a different meaning to this because I have found that no matter how you explain CI and CD, sometimes the definitions may not make sense to one audience to another. So I want to provide you another set of definitions that are widely used for CI and CD. This is from Stack Overflow. So think of continuous integration as taking the working copies and having them synchronized to a mainline several times a day. When I say mainline, that just means what? Pipeline. Basically a set of processes we're going to follow, has different stages. Continuous delivery. This is basically, again, similar to CI, except we're actually putting it into production. So CI is basically, we're going to the main line, we're sharing it, but that doesn't mean it's going to production. Then we have continuous deployment. This is where, again, we're taking the next step after continuous delivery, but we're deploying the product whenever it goes through QA. Now, again, the word here is automatically. In other words, we're not going to have a person at a CCV board saying, okay, we go ahead and execute this now. That's not going to happen. This is all automatic. And then lastly, again, to sum up, DevOps is what? It's an enterprise software development phrase used to mean an agile relationship between development and operations. It's really about what? Collaboration. Let's now proceed to the next lesson. What is a pipeline? Well, a pipeline is going to be a term that we definitely need to know in the world of DevOps. And basically a DevOps pipeline is a set of processes that have been implemented by development and typically operations to make sure that our build or test and all our basically stages have been basically put together in a manner that meets our environment's requirements. Now, one of the primary purposes that we need to have a pipeline is that it keeps software development, the processes, as well as the people, organized, right? That's really the main reason. And we could also really consider similar to an assembly line. In other words, if we go from basically planning to build to basically to test to production, and we do that every time the same way, that's really, again, the way we want to compare it to basically like an assembly line. It's just the same process, very strictly followed.